So for today's player profile, I'm doing one Klay Thompson, one of the greatest shooters ever, obviously. Drafted a Warrior, a legacy player, a guy whose jersey will be retired at one point, four-time champion, as he has let the NBA world know time and time again last season, and a guy that's very polarizing in the fan base, but still has, some real positives and negatives that go along with him, that I think we can cover in a very intimate way. So let's begin with his just stats overall. So last season he averaged a touch under 22 points, uh, about 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists in 69 games, which is actually pretty good, right? Given his durability over the years, having torn his ACL in um, in 2019, and then a couple of years later, the Achilles tear. The fact that he was able to come the last two seasons and average 20 points per game is fairly impressive. And last season, obviously, 22. He led the NBA in 3-point makes at 301 total, I believe. So, again, very good production coming off these injuries, offensively at least. And then from the field, he shot about 43.6%, 41.2 from three, right? So he's an elite shooter. We all know that. He came into the NBA with that kind of marksman label, and hasn't missed a beat since. Whether pre or post injury, he's always been a consistent 40+% 3-point shooter. And then at the line, 88%. Low volume, obviously, but still a very good clip. Now, in the playoffs, 13 total games played, 36 minutes per game. He averaged a couple of points less, right? 18.5 points, 3 points fewer or so. So 18 and a half. 4.2 rebounds, so around the same there. And then his assists kind of remained the same as well, 2.2. What really took a dip, was his efficiency. And so he went from 43.6 in the regular season from the field to 38.8. That's about a 5% decrease right there. And then from three, around a 4.4% decrease from that standpoint at 36.8%. So a touch under 37%. So these efficiency numbers, obviously, we kind of saw watching the games, they reflected the eye test. It was difficult to watch at times, and there's reasons behind it, and some of it was just him missing shots, right? Tired legs, deep in the playoffs, right? He didn't come into camp in shape, and so he kind of found his rhythm towards the end of the year, and at some point you just fall apart when you don't kind of do things as you should, right? Like systematically, there's kind of a routine that you have to hold from start to end. And because Klay kind of had a late breakout to the year, it hurt him later on in the playoffs. He still shot his normal 88 from the line, but we kind of saw the effects of coming into the season out of shape and um, poor shot selection and a bunch of other reasons that reflects in his efficiency in the playoffs, right? So there is context behind this drop off, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But for now, let's start with his strengths because he definitely has a lot of value to this team, right? He's a clear positive. So let's start with the fact that he's an elite floor spacer, one of the best in the NBA, right? No doubt, in the top handful of players, and it's been that way for a decade now. A guy that you just can't cheat off of. If you leave him open, he's going to make you pay consistently, particularly off the ball, right? He's a guy that's going to, come off of curls, pin downs, multiple complex actions, such as the elevator play, a split action, and he will, come off of screens, his ability to kind of move and understand angles, use his body to kind of create separation from the defender off the ball. He's one of the greatest off-ball players in NBA history, not just of this era, but ever. He's extremely crafty with how he is able to create advantages for himself in these situations. And like I said, angle himself off the ball so that he can use screens to uh, create separation from the defender consistently. And that's something that very few players have done at his level, right? You talk about Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, Steph. They're in that mix off the ball in terms of movement and counters, and Klay Thompson is among the best. And that's also reflected in his gravity, right? Because he's such a deadly, lethal shooter at the 3-point line, he has tremendous gravity. He's among the 99th percentile in the NBA at that, off the ball. Moving, having that respect, commanding that attention from the defense to tilt the integrity of it and force rotations and shift it so that it basically takes pressure and relief off of Steph as a creator. His floor spacing ability is also reflected through his gravity, right? And defenses have to respect that, he can get hot at any moment and he can make them pay if he's left open. So you really can't cheat off of him and overhelp, right? So that spacing is a big deal. That's probably his greatest strength. And then furthermore, just his catch and shoot ability since 21-22, which was his first season back from his Achilles tear. He's been shooting 40% on the dot on catch and shoot threes. That's a very significant mark given his volume, right? So extremely efficient in those situations. And then in pull-up situations, he's actually better, right? On a little bit less volume, but enough volume to where you can dismiss any potential error. And his pull-up threes are very efficient, like among the elite. 41.6% since his return from injury a couple of years ago. So he's an elite shooter. That was something that was really never going to go away. And that still reigns true today in 2023 going into next season. That's something that Klay Thompson can hang his hat on till he retires, right? I think he said he's going to play around 4 to 5 more years in the NBA. And as long as he's out here, he's going to be a guy that the defense, has to take into account off the ball. He's also a volume scorer, right? He gets shots off, he gets them up. He's able to, consistently attempt 16, 17, 18 shots a game. And so that volume is definitely, I would consider, a strength because just having a guy that has the legs and the capability to get shots off on a night-to-night basis is a big deal, right? I know we make the comparisons from Klay to other shooting guards, right? But even a championship shooting guard like KCP this year, he can't get the volume of shots that Klay can, right? He's not getting up 15, 16 shots a game, right? And that chews out your legs. It's definitely taxing. It takes a toll on you on a game-to-game basis, right? Because there's greater responsibility on you to score. So while KCP may be better as a championship shooting guard in other areas, one thing that he isn't as good at is just being a pure volume scorer, a guy that can be a threat from the mid-range, right? We've seen Klay in that elbow area, in that, at the nail, pulling up for a mid-range shot and being able to, convert on those at a decent clip at times, right? And so just that ability to do that is something that I've taken notice of. And this has been the case for years, but he still has that ability on a night-to-night basis. Something that I've noticed he's kind of worked on and made some strides in is his drive and kick ability, right? So I've noticed him just putting the ball on the floor more comfortably, more often, and being able to just drive and kick, just shot creation from that standpoint, or rather not shot creation but playmaking, right? So just putting the ball on the floor, creating off the bounce, and making plays for others, kind of collapsing the defense and creating, an advantage for some rotations, and ultimately, chaos ensues where he's moving off the ball. Guys are, ball movement, player movement, finding the open man, and shots, usually fall. So just that ability to drive and kick and something that I feel like, been more comfortable with the last couple of years, is something that I've noticed. It's a wrinkle to his game offensively that he'll continue to expand. Um, and it's definitely something that I've noticed pay dividends in certain series where if Klay gets run off the line, right, whether it be in transition or a set play, he has to, have multiple counters and multiple options. And sometimes he'll take that mid-range pull-up that I mentioned before, but other times, as of late, he's added that driving kick ability to punish defenses that overreact to his shooting behind the line. So definitely something that I've taken note of. And then just in general, and this has been the case for his career, he's always been a really good cutter. And that kind of has remained the same the last couple seasons as well. The numbers back this up. While his volume may not be as high as it historically has been, his efficiency is still very good. And this is something that he's used to counter a variety of defenses, right? He, as a shooter, as a guy that plays off the ball, you're going to see a multitude of coverages, right? A myriad of looks. So when he's, facing defenses that switch or that face guard him or top lock, right? They overplay his shot, or they cut off perimeter actions. His ability to cut off of those is something that provides an extra layer, a more nuanced counter to the offense and to his game overall, because now he's multi-dimensional, right? He's not a guy that's just going to live on the perimeter and, live and die with his shooting. He's a guy that can also punish defenses as a cutter if they overplay those particular actions. And then also something I noticed as of last season, he's a better rebounder overall. That's something that Bruce Frazier, who's an assistant coach on the Warriors, really emphasized, is just being more active on the glass, helping out in other ways, being a positive, trying to fill in the gaps. So last season, Klay had a career high 4.1 rebounds per game, which is, an average mark, but something that he noticeably took a step in. And so we, obviously we want to see him continue to take strides in that area, but he has been a better rebounder and he's definitely evolved in that sense. So definitely something that I've taken note of as well. Also, he's a tough shot maker. We kind of know this, right? Just watching Klay Thompson, he's a guy that can take fadeaway shots from the corner, tough angles, tough looks, over contests, whether the defender's on him tight, very tight. His ability to just get shots off at 6'6", with his release point and his movement, just his shot quality obviously is not high because he's a guy that defenses respect, but he's also able to punish them at an elite level. And so that's a testament to his shot-making ability, whether it be off the bounce, but more so off the ball, right? Just coming off of screens in difficult actions, difficult situations where you have multiple defenders draped all over you, and you have to, rise up and knock shots down at an efficient clip. And he's been able to do that time and time again. And then the last thing I'll kind of mention is his defensive effort, right? Even though we've seen some regression in that particular department from Klay over the years, his effort has remained decent most of the time, right? So there's times where if he's not getting a particular number of shot attempts or if he's struggling to score the ball at his usual clip, he'll kind of, it'll kind of reflect itself defensively. But for the most part, his defensive effort, especially in the playoffs, I'll say, has really been at a very good level, right? He's typically trying to slide his feet to the best of his ability on the ball, sticking to his man, being attentive, sticking to, the schemes and the game plan. So while he obviously isn't a positive defender in my eyes, he still puts in the effort for the most part on a night-to-night basis so that he can at least be maybe a net neutral or contribute in some capacity on that end. And then the second slide of strengths, he's multi-positional. what we call a swingman in the NBA, a guy that can play both the 2 and the 3. He can guard both positions and play both positions offensively as well, right? So he's a guy that as a shooting guard, he can kind of, move off the ball, be sharp, kind of, take more of a scoring role. And even at the 3, just be a catch and shoot guy, a guy that, picks his spots more intentionally, but maybe less of a scorer, but maybe in smaller lineups, playing that 3 spot, defending at a slower wing, and also rebounding at a better level. So he's shown the ability to play both the 2 and the 3 over the years, and I think that remains the same even post injury. I know Steve has played him at the 4 at times, but I don't think he's necessarily equipped to play that position on a night-to-night basis. But I would still say that he is still confidently a swingman in this in the NBA, right? And we've seen him play in closing lineups time and time again, whether it be in the finals or in the playoffs. And he's, been able to be effective in those situations as well, playing multiple positions, whether it be the 2 or the 3, regular kind of rotation or just a small ball lineup, playing Draymond at the 5. So he also has good positional size, right? And we've kind of seen this over the years, just his frame at 6'6", 6'7", 225 pounds or so. A guy that has some good weight to him and a good frame. His size and strength overall, just being able to stick onto kind of these wings, but also smaller guards at times. It's something that he's played to his advantage, right? And offensively, he's able to back down smaller guards and take advantage of those mismatches, whether it be in the post, or even on the block. We've seen last season where he's not afraid to just be physical and take advantage of that height, and also his strength, his upper body strength, the ability to just kind of absorb contact in the post defensively, but also offensively, just bump guys off their spots and really bully them on the block. So he still has that ability with his frame and his positional size to take advantage of certain matchups or hold his own, right? We've seen him guard guys like, LeBron in the post. And even though LeBron did his thing, Klay did his best and did the best to his ability, given his tools. And you can't really ask for a better possession-to-possession defensive effort than what Klay provided, even on those switches, right? Like, LeBron did his thing. He was scoring on Klay at will in the playoffs, but Klay also did his job in just getting contests off, absorbing those post-up bumps. And so that's something that he'll continue to build on as his career goes on, as he ages. And then also he's a great system fit. We all know this. Guy that plays off the ball heavily. His movement, the player movement that we like to, incorporate. And he makes Steph's job easier, right? Just a spacer, a guy that the defense has to respect and react to. So just in and of himself, his presence on the court as a floor spacer, as a guy that's a threat to shoot and to get hot at any given moment, that just makes Steph's job easier and takes the load off of him from a scoring standpoint. So no doubt, Klay is definitely a positive in that standpoint. And then the last thing is just he's not afraid of the moment. He's a guy that is not afraid of the big shot, is not afraid of the big games. We've seen, obviously, he hasn't always delivered, especially as of late, right? But he's still shown the force required and the mentality required to, just get shots off and to play with a level of engagement. Because some players shy away. Some players are scared of those moments and of those shots. But Klay is somebody that is going to embrace that challenge, embrace what the moment requires of him. And sometimes he'll deliver, other times he may not. But what we do know is he's going to be there, and you're going to feel his presence regardless. Anybody that want to add in the chat? Any other strengths? Because I'm about to move on to weaknesses. So Klay definitely ain't scared. Klay was trying so hard on offense last season, he forgot how to play defense. I agree with that. There were times last season he did allow his offense to affect his defense. Got all of them? All right. Let's move on to weaknesses now. So, his first weakness is that his production, while it is high, it is unreliable on a night-to-night basis, right? So, every game, you go, game to game, there's times where he'll give you, 14, 15 points. There's times he'll give you 19, 20 points. And there's times he'll give you 26, 27 points, right? But the efficiency is really the unreliable part of that, right? Because he'll still give you double-figure scoring. But a result of his low shot quality, right? He's a guy that's going to take tough shots. But what comes with that is a lot of misses, right? You're just not going to make tough shots consistently because they're low quality looks. So on a possession to possession, night to night, game to game basis, his production isn't reliable because his efficiency isn't consistent. So while he may give you, on average 21, 22 points per game in the regular season or 19 points in the playoffs, there were games in the playoffs he gave us single digit points, right? 9 points or 11 points. And then there were games he gave us 27 points or 32 points. And so while his production may appear as if he's a balanced player consistently from a night-to-night basis, the reality is his efficiency dictates his production more so, and there's times where he'll shoot himself out of these slumps or lower production nights. So he'll kind of force the issue. And so that's a problem, right? That hurts the team. And that's a result of him being reliant on the perimeter, right? He's a guy that's going to be perimeter heavy. He's going to shoot a lot of shots at the 3-point line, in the mid-range. He's not somebody that's attacking the basket consistently, getting to the free throw line, attacking mismatches, taking advantage of switches. He's somebody that is going to take difficult shots off the ball, and he's going to be dependent on hitting those shots at a efficient clip. Now, we've seen him do it in the past at times, and Klay's always been a relatively inconsistent player, right? Unreliable at times from a efficiency standpoint. But we've seen the last 2 seasons that amplify even more so. It reigns true, especially in the playoffs where his inconsistencies have loomed large and have hurt us at times. Particularly, we've seen that against teams like Memphis a couple of years ago, Boston in the finals. We saw it against the Lakers, right? So there have been series where he's just been extremely inconsistent because he just hasn't found that balance on a night-to-night basis where maybe he's a little bit less on volume, but his efficiency is higher, right, consistently. But because his efficiency is so volatile, his production is unreliable overall. So, and that's also a reflection of his irrational confidence, right? There are times where Klay will hijack too many possessions, take it upon himself to shoot himself out of a poor shooting night, or if we're struggling to score, take some ill-advised shots. Or even in the clutch this season, there were times where we didn't really need to make a shot or attempt a shot, but he would, take a shot in transition with, 20 seconds on the shot clock pretty early on. And while he may have made it, there were times where he made those shots. Those were shots that in a vacuum were unnecessary, and we didn't need those shots in those particular moments, right? Rather, just slowing the pace down, getting a good possession. It's not necessarily about the execution as much as the process, right? There were times where Klay was hitting these tough shots or making these bad, ill-advised shots, but it was masking the process behind it, which in fact was just we didn't need those shots in those particular moments. Or in a vacuum, attempting those shots on a consistent basis is unreliable or is unsustainable. That's really the word I'm looking for, right? And so we've seen this unsustainability where to start the season, Klay was extremely up and down. He kind of found his footing kind of mid to late season. And then in the playoffs, he really was on the downwards trend, especially in the Lakers series. Against Sacramento, less so, but versus the Lakers, he really struggled, and we kind of saw the unsustainable approach that he took all season long reign its ugly head in that Lakers series. And then there's times where, like I said, he doesn't play within the flow of the offense where we need to just get a good shot up or settle it down. And he'll kind of, take an ill-advised shot or a shot that maybe early in the shot clock, something we don't need. We may be up by 2 or 3 points, and we only need an easy shot, whether it be in the mid-range or at the basket, and he'll take a tough contested three. And so it's plays like that we really need to correct next season. And having acquired a guy like Chris Paul to settle down the offense, generate quality looks consistently, I believe he'll have a large part and a hand in correcting these issues. And then just in general, Klay's just from an ability standpoint, he has shot creation limitations, right? And this has been a theme throughout his career. He's a guy that just has an unsophisticated handle. It doesn't necessarily have a bunch of moves in his arsenal, gonna break you off the bounce, off the dribble. He's not gonna take advantage of his quickness and his creativity off the bounce, off the dribble to take advantage of mismatches, right? There were times where you see he has a mismatch presented in front of him and he was ineffective. And that's a result of, obviously, a decline in athleticism due to injuries, but also having a loose, unrefined handle that just has never really been tightened or developed to the point where he can break you off the bounce in a myriad of ways, different combinations, different moves, to put himself in an advantage from a shot creation standpoint. So that's definitely a weakness of his, but we don't need that as much next season, having Chris Paul, being able to set Klay up more so off the ball rather than Klay searching and hunting for these off the dribble opportunities. And then, like I said, his unwillingness to sacrifice at times, and that kind of goes hand in hand with his hijacking of the offense or being reliant and taking low shots and leaning into those situations, kind of pressing at times, right? And we've seen him, take too many shot attempts where it creates an imbalance of shot distribution, right? Where maybe he's just taking far too many shots compared to Steph or Andrew Wiggins, who are two very capable scorers in their own right. Possibly even taking away from Jordan Poole at times in those second units. But the main thing that I have from an unwillingness to sacrifice standpoint is his unwillingness to come off the bench, really. And that's kind of the biggest thing, is coming off of injury. We've seen Steph in 2022 when, he hadn't really played towards the end of the regular season for a chunk of games, goes into the playoffs, Jordan Poole is riding the hot hand, and Steph takes a step back and is able to sacrifice for the betterment of the team for the rhythm that Jordan Poole had built all season towards the end and allow him to flourish and thrive as a starter. And so Steph came off the bench in that capacity a couple of years ago. We've seen Draymond do it last season for Jordan Poole, actually, as well. Coming off the bench against the Kings in multiple games, being, fully embracing that role, sacrificing for the betterment of the team. And so we've seen Draymond do that as well. And then we've also seen Andrew Wiggins do it, right? First game against the Kings last season in the playoffs off the bench, 17 points, I believe 7 rebounds, really contributed in a meaningful way, and was productive. And so we've seen guys like Wiggins have a long layoff, right, with his personal matter. Draymond be suspended after Game 3 and for multiple games, come off the bench. Steph get injured towards the end of the season in 2022, come off the bench to sacrifice, take a step back, and allow the team to maintain or build off of its rhythm that it has already established. And so Klay is somebody that obviously in 2022, coming back from his torn Achilles, the ACL tear also, all those years ago, he just didn't want to come off the bench. And he started his first game. He didn't really allow himself to be integrated in a more organic way. It felt like it was kind of forced, and we had to adjust on the fly. Wiggins took a major step back as a result. Jordan Poole had to come off the bench and kind of find his footing in that standpoint. So it felt as if, Klay didn't really think about the team and the rhythm that they had built it from that standpoint, and more so his idea of starting and getting back to the player he once was, which is obviously what we all want as fans, but there's a process and there's a way to do that without taking away from what the team has built. And so, obviously, it's in the past, right? There's no situation or scenario that Klay's going to come off the bench going into next season unless, God forbid, he's out for a stretch of games and maybe, we have a rhythm that we've built and he can come off the bench and slowly reintegrate himself onto the team. But just the idea and the hope is at least from a shot attempt standpoint and orchestrating a degree of balance on the team, we'd prefer that Klay is less trigger happy and plays within the flow of the offense more so, instead of looking for his own shot, looking for the best shot, right? And so if it's not presented to him, moving the ball and then moving off the ball so he can kind of set himself up for an even better shot, or resetting and pitching to the front court player, so maybe a DHO or different counters, different variations we can run, as opposed to forcing the first shot that's presented to him, and which is more than likely going to be a lower quality look. And then the last weakness that I have on this slide is his finishing talent, and that's something that is really probably taken the biggest hit since his injuries. He was 13th worst in the NBA last season by that rank, and that's statistically accurate according to, I believe it was Second Spectrum. Draymond was on that list too, and I'll get to that tomorrow, but Klay was among the worst finishers in the NBA, and that is obviously something that's going to hurt us. He was never a guy that's going to finish above the rim or used his athleticism in downhill situations to put himself at an advantage. But just him being one of the worst finishers in the NBA and starting at shooting guard is something that hurts our team. And so his finishing talent, like I said, is among the worst. And he also has an inability to slash, right? That inability to slash, putting the ball on the floor, getting to the rim, and making something happen, creating something out of nothing. That is something that we've seen Wiggins be able to do, by the way. Like, Wiggins can, in a pinch, put the ball on the floor, get to the rim, either draw a foul or finish above the rim, and use his athletic tools to create something out of nothing. But Klay has just a simple inability to slash. Like, he really struggles to get by his defender and often settles for fadeaway jumpers on the wing or in that mid-range. So, it's kind of made him a less efficient player overall, and in turn, it's made the offense less efficient at times. So we're going to have to find ways around that, because as a finisher, defenses simply don't respect him, and he's also not capable of, or not as capable of, punishing even slower wings or smaller guards downhill, right? As a guy like Wiggins is, right? So we see these issues arise, especially in the playoffs, where he's more forced to be perimeter oriented, and so by nature those shots are less efficient. What's up, Urkel? Do you want to add anything to strengths or weaknesses? Sizzle, AK Sizzle, you guys want to add anything to strengths, weaknesses that I've listed so far? I have one more slide, by the way. Anyone in the chat?
Dre, what's up, man? How's everyone going?
What up?
I'll wait till the end of the breakdown so we can get into some of that stuff. But yeah,
okay, yeah.
I'm cool.
Perfect. Yeah, and then the final kind of points I'm going to make from a weakness standpoint is his defensive regression, and that's something that we saw the last 2 seasons post-injury, right? He was one of the elite perimeter defenders at point of attack in the NBA, and his decline on that end has been it's been difficult to watch at times, because, like I've mentioned earlier, like, the effort is there. He's he tries to fight over screens, but the point of attack, uh, that high level point of attack ability has now turned into a liability, right? So at this point in his career, at the point of attack, he's just a liability. He's not able to stick to quicker guards, players who are shifty on the perimeter, who can get to their spots at will. He just doesn't have the same foot speed and lateral quickness he once did to stick with those players. So, it's obviously hurt our team from a versatility standpoint, from a lineup standpoint. And but we've still seen him at times also be able to compensate for those limitations as well. So in the finals against Jaylen Brown, for example, while he was not guarding, Jason Tatum or someone at point of attack from that standpoint, there were times where Jaylen was going downhill and putting pressure at the basket, and Klay did a phenomenal job just sliding his feet, cutting him off, really putting his body in front of him to seal the drive and force Jaylen to either reset or settle for a difficult shot on the perimeter, or even turn the ball over and lose the handle of it. So while Klay is more of a liability now at the point of attack than he ever was, there are times where he is able to get some of that back from a quickness standpoint. But like I said, his lateral quickness is below average compared to the rest of the league, and he tends to die on screens on the ball and off the ball as well, right? So we saw against De'Aaron Fox where he struggled to, navigate those screens that Sabonis was setting. Fox kind of got into that floater range, that mid-range at will, and Klay was just simply a step and a half late at times where he just couldn't recover. And his ability to recover has been just one of the biggest drop-offs that we've seen overall from a defensive standpoint. And just like I said, dying on screens off the ball, just when he was guarding Keegan Murray, it felt as if he just couldn't keep up with him, right? Just that, like I said, that foot speed, that ability to stick with his man consistently, that assignment, he just wasn't able to. Couldn't compete with him from a foot speed standpoint off the ball, right? Keegan's just has younger, fresher legs, and Klay, coming off of 2 injuries, doesn't have that athleticism to, possession in, possession out, stick with him, contest his shots, or run him off the line like he once did, right? We've seen him do it against the likes of Paul George a few years ago, right? 3-4 years ago, he was doing a great job against guys like Paul George, Danny Green, Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, guys that can play off the ball in pockets, right? CJ McCollum, right? So we've seen, these types of players who are kind of combos, right? Because Kawhi can play on and off the ball. Paul George can play on and off the ball. CJ McCollum on and off the ball. But Klay's versatility has taken a big hit since then, right? He's more so an off-ball defender than on the ball, and even he struggles off the ball at times as well, depending on the matchup. And like I mentioned before, just he falls asleep at times. That's been a repetitive pattern throughout his, or that's been a repetitive weakness throughout his career. We've seen a pattern of him just falling asleep at times, allowing some backdoor cuts. I felt like the last 2 seasons, it's been less so, as traditionally he, those issues have arisen. It used to be an issue back in 2016, 17, maybe during the KD years as well at times, but less so now. But there are times where he'll just fall asleep on rotations, being crisp, being sharp, positionally having that awareness of where he is, where his man is, and falling asleep. We saw against the Utah Jazz when Malik Beasley kind of got free, and Klay just was ball watching and essentially tracked away from Malik and just gave up an open 3 that was a huge shot that essentially won the Jazz the game before the steal that kind of sealed that deal. But my point is that there's times where Klay isn't as engaged or connected defensively as he should be, and so that's hurt the connectivity from that standpoint as well. And then finally, I just kind of wrote overall his lack of explosiveness, and that's mostly a result of his Achilles tear. He just doesn't have the same burst and off the ground that he once had. And it's not that he didn't really have that at a high level even then, right? It's not like in 2017 or 2018, in his peak years, 2019, he was necessarily beating guys off the bounce or getting to the basket or even, tracking with the foot speed of the quickest guards, even though he did a very good job on guys like Russ and Dame back then. He still didn't have the greatest foot speed in the world, right? He wasn't one of the elite players from that lateral standpoint, even though he was among the best. He wasn't in that top echelon. But now it's really taken a hit overall to where his explosiveness is completely gone, right? So just finishing above the rim or even below the rim, just his burst, just beating his man off the dribble to create advantages for himself, and sticking with, like I said before, quick guards, guys that can play off the bounce, off the dribble, and sticking with them. That lack of burst has also shown itself in off ball defensive matchups as well, where he has to just track players like Kevin Herter or Keegan Murray, and guys get kind of free as a result. So, obviously the defensive decline and the regression has been difficult to watch the last few seasons, but Klay has still shown that there are moments he can regain some of that mobility back that he once had in 2019 and 2017. And there's times where he's shown flashes of being able to guard bigger players that may be a little bit slower footed. But obviously, he's a guy that we're going to have to compensate for and hide defensively. Use him more as a help defender, right? Because he still has those tools, right? But he needs to make a more conscious effort on a possession-to-possession basis, so he can end up being a consensus net neutral or slight positive on that end. Because I do believe there's a path that he can be that at some point. And obviously we've seen him this offseason lose a little bit of weight, slim down a little bit. He looks to be in shape. So the idea is maybe he doesn't regain all of that quickness he lost, but if he can just be attentive off the ball defensively and really be mobile from that standpoint, from a rotation standpoint, closing out, then that could be a huge asset for us. Because if he's even a net neutral defensively, I think it makes us a completely different team from a defensive versatility, combinations, and lineup standpoint. And it also takes a lot of pressure off of Wiggins to compensate for those deficits, as well as Draymond to have to overhelp as the anchor of our defense. But that's kind of a rundown of strengths and weaknesses. But if anyone wants to add anything I missed or amend any of the things that I said, feel free. I'm about to get to expectations after, but I'm going to leave the floor to Shadow, Sun God CJ, AK, the chat to add anything. This is the best I could come up with. But if any changes that you guys would make or anything you disagree with, feel free to add.
I'll go. This is kind of like, I don't know if it's kind of like a basketball related weakness. I guess it is. I do think he is a little bit mentally weak. I do think he does let people get under his skin. You kind of saw it with Booker early in the season, Dylan Brooks late in the season, and I do think Poole, trying to like go for the starting spot had an effect on Klay too, mentally. I do think that when he does miss shots, he does get a little bit down on himself. So, is that a thing that can be fixed? I don't know. I don't know enough about that to say either way. But I've just noticed like over the years, like especially these past two playoff runs, like when he has a bad game, he has a bad game. Shooting wise. I think game 2 versus Boston, he was like 2 for 19. I think game 7 against the Kings, he was like 4 for 19. So like, is that like, I think that is him mentally like getting down on himself. And now when he's playing well, like game 2 versus the Lakers, when he's shooting well, like he's on fire, and he's taking whatever he wants and he's feeling great. But I do think like if he can be a little bit more stable mentally, I think that could help him out a lot as he gets older and ages throughout his career.
100% agree. 100% agree. Shadow, do you have any thoughts on strengths, weaknesses, or whatever?
I was just going to add really quickly to your last point about lack of explosiveness, because I think it goes hand in hand. I think that really led to him, leading to him fouling a lot more, which, was a huge problem, at least for the Dubs overall. But Klay was one of the symptoms of that issue. Is that, yeah, the lack of explosiveness meant that, when guards got by him, he he reached a lot and picked up a lot of fouls that way. And I do hope that it was more of a team, team wide thing rather than Klay as an individual. And it's also part mental. So with him being more locked in next year, hopefully, that's also decreases or goes away.
Yeah, 100%. My thing is, yes, Klay was bad. Yes, Klay has weaknesses, but I believe his strengths are like, way outweigh anything. Like his basketball IQ, his shooting, his ability to create gravity for other players. Not even speaking on Steph per se, but when he's on there with the second unit, I think that in 2022 and as well as a little bit of this season, the games that Steph didn't play, it helped out like Jordan Poole, it helped Wiggins, it helped like other players. I just think that like okay, the defense, we know he's a step slower, he's older, he's coming off of two catastrophic injuries, but I think this overall is an indictment more on Steve Kerr because Steve Kerr got to put Klay in better positions to win. Like at the end of the day, like sometimes, like the reason why Klay even shot 2 for 19 or 4 for 19 is yes, he missed shots, but Kerr didn't rein him in. Like if other players ain't doing something well, you say, okay, let's try this, or let's change up this scheme, or let's just do that. Like it's great to have tremendous confidence in Klay, which I agree with. But a perfect example is in the Lakers series, GP2 was cooking AD, like absolutely barbecue chicken mixed with jerk chicken cooking AD in the first half. I believe he had like 15 points. They ran like 11 pick and rolls in a row on AD, and AD couldn't stop shit. He couldn't stop a nosebleed that time. And then they brought in Klay, and in the second half they go, okay, Klay, go ahead, shoot, shoot, shoot. Like at the end of the day, Kerr needs to like rein Klay in and give him a specific role. Like I'm not saying he has to be JJ Redick and sit in the corner, but on the offensive end, you got to know what is his strengths and overemphasize that. Now, the second part is in 2022, believe it or not, when Jordan Poole wasn't like didn't have that step on defensively, or Klay Thompson didn't have that step defensively, Steve Kerr went to a zone early and often. Like they mixed up zone, mixed up defenses, mixed up coverages a lot. We sat in the same coverage all playoffs and we didn't mix it up whatsoever. Whatsoever. So I think that had an effect on it. So people started hunting. Like you see Austin Reeves, Walker, and think just literally picking on Klay. So Steve Kerr should have thought into himself, okay, let me give him a 3-2 zone so they can't get penetration in the paint and do all those things and sit there and pick on people. You have to shoot them out. You understand what I'm saying? And in 2022, we won series when we dared Boston Celtics, make a fucking shot. We're going to play zone. I dare you to make a shot. And that's why Klay got to play 30 plus minutes, 32 minutes. And we didn't see no exposing on the defensive end like that. And meanwhile, that in that same year, he only came back, I believe, January 9th of 2022 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that was his first game, and he was on minutes restrictions. And throughout the year, he wasn't playing back to backs. And in the playoffs, they gave him the ability to do what he needed to do. I think they got to do more of that, and I think put Klay in the position to win. Like it's just like saying, okay, GP2, just shoot, forget about penetrating or do anything. Like Klay didn't try to attack the basket. He didn't try to do nothing of that sort. He didn't put Klay in the post against smaller guards. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Klay is 6'7" and not no cheating 6'7", like he's 6'5.5". No, Klay is 6'7". He could have went into the post. He could have went Kobe on him, turnaround jumpers and those type of things. But Kerr didn't run those type of sets. So I'm not saying Klay gets no blame, but I put more emphasis and more blame on Steve Kerr for not doing what he needed to than I do on Klay Thompson.
Shadow, I think you really said some incredible stuff, and there's two things that you said that stuck out to me, so I'm gonna expand on those. So the first thing you said, and you really summarized it well, and I never really thought about it this way in terms of framing, but you are 100% right when you say Klay's positives and strengths outweigh his negatives and weaknesses, like 100% true. There's a reason he's a positive on the court every year. And every year that he's been back, right, it's been 2 years, and he's been a positive on the court in the regular season and the playoffs. So even with all these weaknesses that I listed, he's still been a positive for the reasons that you've listed, which is essentially the gravity off the ball, right? Creating for others, creating those advantages for, guys like Kevon Looney. When Kevon is setting a screen for or a DHO, or like Klay's coming off a curl or pin down or a split action, like the defense has to react a certain way because he's such a respectable, or not even respectable, he's just an elite shooter. Like, so you have to command some attention to him. And so that results in guys like
Yep.
Draymond and Looney
Yep.
getting these high assists in the front court.
Yep.
On top,
Yep.
obviously we talk about Steph's gravity, but Klay has a version of that, right? It may not be as potent, but it's among the top 2 or 3 in the NBA in terms of potency. So that's a great point. And so, and I agree with you. Like that 2022 run, when we mixed coverages, right, on a series to series basis, it was able to mask and hide Klay
Bro,
against some.
the way we were hiding Klay, we were hiding Jordan, we were hiding like everybody who could not, and so, to some extent, I wouldn't say hiding because he can't play defense. We were hiding Steph and preserving him from people
Right.
trying to just like literally like dump it in the post, go on him,
Yeah.
put their weight on him,
Yes.
tire him out, and do those things. At the end of the day, we got to be smart. Like the only reason why they go out at Steph, which a lot of people don't understand, it's not because of have anything to do with Steph's defense. It has all to do with Steph's
It has
offense.
nothing to do with. It has nothing to
It
do
is
with
all
ability.
to do with Steph's offense. Why?
It's just being effective, right?
Effective
Like,
and being and tiring him out and fatiguing him out and do
right.
those things. Because Steph's not going to get tired throughout the course of a game. Why? Because he's damn near a Kenyan. He's a marathon runner. Like he's an Olympic level, like running around, being conditioned. He's super. But when you start throwing weight on him, when you start putting him in every single action, those things tire him out and don't give him legs to go turn around and hit those 30-footers in transition and start and give you the nights and go to sleep and the shimmies and looking at
Yep.
my hand and I'm him and all those things. So those are the things that get the crowd engaged. Those are the things that get Wiggins active and angry and Draymond active and angry and Looney crashing the boards and doing things. Like Steph leads by his play. He doesn't have to say, let's go, guys. He hits 3 threes in a row. Wiggins is engaged. GP2 is engaged. They're locked in. And because I know these guys, I know what makes them go and what makes them tick. Now, people don't realize that if you were to assess the Golden State Warriors, they're like a 757 jet or 757 gigantic plane. Why? Because Steph is the captain. Klay Thompson is the co-captain. Klay helps Steph, and Steph helps Klay a lot. Steph drives he drives and flies the plane, but Klay's your co-captain. So with that being said, when Steph plays really well, it helps Klay. But when Klay plays poorly, now Steph has to overcompensate.
Right.
To start
Right.
being point guard, looking for him. It takes away from him. People fail to realize that when Steph is off, when Klay is off, that means not Steph is off, but Steph's going to take less shots. Why? Because Steph's trying so hard to get Klay back
Yes.
involved that it
Yes.
takes away from his shooting and his shots. Again, I'm not saying nothing that any of you guys said or even in the chat or anything is wrong, but I just want to open you guys up because I have extra information and access to data and certain things that you guys
And by the
don't
way,
have. And that's the only
Shadow,
reason why I'm bringing these things up.
and what you're saying matches my observations too. Like you probably have a more deep understanding of this just due to your like just who you talk to and what you see. Now with me, it's like just watching him on the court during that Lakers series. There were times where just Klay couldn't throw a pebble in the ocean. But Steph would just continue to find
And
him
continually
and
find
try
him.
to
So we
break him out of that slump.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry to interject, Dre, but we were on Klay. Why is he shooting? Why is he thing? Why is he shooting? Because Steph's fucking forcing him to the
yeah,
ball.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
don't lose confidence. Then that's what he's doing, which is the right thing to do. But bro, 2 for 19, you gotta like start finding people, start hitting the mid range, maybe go. I've seen Klay do a floater. I've seen Klay do the Kobe move and the Jordan move where he backs a guy down, turn around jumper, splash. I've seen him run to the corner, which is his most efficient shot, and lean to the side and do that lean to the side and splash that shot. So at the end of the day, and I seen Klay can take one dribble and go to the paint. You understand what I'm saying? And do a normal ass layup. Like there, that's okay. He doesn't have to take 14 threes. You understand what I'm saying? So those things are on Kerr because he didn't put Klay in the best position to win, and that onus is on him. Yes, Klay missed the shots. Yes, Klay missed rotations. But when Klay's offense is off, his defense suffers dramatically. Wiggins now, when his defense is on and it's crazy, his offense flourishes. But Klay's the absolute opposite. You understand what I'm saying? So with that being said, yes, Klay, I believe that last season, and I wouldn't say he's mentally weak, but I will say the mental component was more deficient than the physical component for him last year. I told you guys at the beginning of the year, straight up in the summer, I said, guys, I got some information, and I would like to tell you that Klay is mentally down. He's not fully engaged. He's a little out of shape, and mentally, he's going through some things, and it's going to take him time and acclimated to get by. Did I not say that?
You did. You absolutely did.
And I
Yeah.
came and no Woj broke it, no shams, but I just know that I said he didn't train all, and it was in his head because of his injury. When the Myers and Kerr were calling him and everybody was and they were tapping in with all the players, he said, Klay, this is what we're gonna do. Clay's like, what? We're back to the physio. We're back to not playing back to backs. You're bringing me back slowly. He wasn't ready for that mentally for a guy who missed 2.5 seasons, then had to climb his way back. Then he had to struggle and be missing shots. And Clay's not used to missing shots, so that mentally weighs on him. It's like a pretty girl and a dude runs up and says, "You're the ugliest bitch I've ever seen." She's gonna feel hurt. Just like when he misses shots and people are saying Clay's trash, it's gonna hurt him. That's why when Booker's saying you ain't that no more, Clay got in his feelings.
A
And
real bad
that's
bitch knows that she's always a bad bitch. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I get that 100%. Yeah, so with that being said, and there's nothing, and I'm not saying you guys are specifically bashing Clay. I'm not even saying that. You guys are telling the truth. Clay did not play defense well. Clay missed shots. Clay was mentally not there last year. All those things are true. But what we have to remember is, as far as shooting guards, let's not forget what the position means. Shooting guards. There is nobody better in the league, like when it comes to shooting. So at the end of the day, I think that's what his role needs to be. Fucking shoot. Only shoot. You rebound when you can, play make when you can, help defend when you can, but let's not get it confused. You're there to let it fly and make shots. That's it. That role's defined. Clay, you don't have to come out of body and because you're not hitting shots, you're the only one down there. You're on a 1-on-3 and you're pulling up. That's not needed when you're not making shots because
Right.
mentally your mind got to be in it. And that's all I'm saying, guys. I'm not saying you guys are killing him or anything like that. I'm not one of those Clay stands. But what I will say is be cognizant from the fact of where he started the beginning of the year. His mental wasn't there, and he didn't really
No,
catch a
Shadow.
grasp on it, and it
I love
hurt.
the
And it
yes.
hurt him that they were a subpar team because Clay, out of everybody, even including Draymond, felt he was the cause of the team being bad
Shadow.
because he wasn't on. Yeah.
Love the context you provided. No, I have nothing to push back against. I think everything you said was fair. I think I agree with you. Steve didn't put Clay in the right positions defensively, right? He kind of left Clay out there to fail from it in a sense. He didn't really do a good job of mixing it up against, I mean, at times he did, a little bit, but not to the point where Klay could play to his strengths defensively, which is, in pockets, in spurts, maybe guard some POA if he has some juice in his legs, but for the most part, be a help defender, a guy who's positionally
Bro,
sound.
I saw when Wiggins, right? Listen to me. When Wiggins was coming off the bench in Sacramento, Steve Kerr said, "Great idea. How about Clay on Fox?"
Yeah, yeah,
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like Clay wasn't put in the best positions to win, man. And Wiggins, obviously, he didn't play for 2 months, so Kerr tried to do the sensible thing. Okay, first game a thing, but when it goes to game 2 and game 3, like, come on, bro. Like at this point, we already know our season wasn't that. We need to lock in and play and start off well. And Clay starting on Fox, and man is getting buckets on him. People like NBA players get embarrassed for two things. They get embarrassed when they don't get paid, and they get embarrassed when they get hunted on defense and they get killed on defense. Whether they get dropped, whether they get shifted, whether a man is dropping 40 on their head top, they get embarrassed. And right off the gate, as soon as the playoffs started, Steve Kerr literally made Clay the class clown because fucking Fox was annihilating him.
love it. No, I love that context. You're right. You're right, Steve. Because against Dallas, we were running a lot more zone coverages. Against Boston, we kind of put Klay in situations where he could kind of be a help defender. Um,
And on that, we didn't even put Clay on the close to any offensive threats. There was time Clay was guarding bigs, dog. You understand what I'm saying? Just to hide him from the, and that's okay,
yes,
bro. Preserve
yes,
him. Look
yes.
in the Celtics series. Watch. There's plays where he's on Rob Wills, Horford. You know how much times Clay was guarding
Yeah,
Horford, bro?
Horford. Yeah, yeah,
You,
yeah.
you,
Oh, yeah.
bro, I'm just giving you guys context because again, I know intricately Steve's game plan. He had a game plan last year. In 2022, obviously Mike Brown was there and whatnot, and they had a game plan. I'm telling you guys, he was literally winging it this playoffs. The team will tell you that. The players will tell you that. The coaching staff will tell you that. Fucking Coach Kenny was looking at this man with 10 heads when Wiggins wasn't on him and they weren't matching Wiggins minutes. Bro, at one point, Coach Atkinson had to get up to Steve and say and pull Wiggins to the side. I forget what game it was. He pulled him to the side and said, "Bro, forget about what Steve says. Don't come off on Fox." And then Wiggins was strapping Fox, completely strapping him. And Kerr wasn't even matching the minutes. Fox would go to the bench, and then Kerr was bringing on Wiggins when the man's already going to the bench.
Yeah, like I'm looking at some of these matchup numbers from the 22 playoffs. Like we were putting Klay on these like even though these guards were kind of on the smaller side, right? They weren't necessarily quick. Like Jalen Brunson, right? Like he's a shifty guard, but he's not necessarily gonna like get to the rim. He's 6'1". So Klay ended up guarding him, and Brunson shot 3 for 11 on Klay in those playoffs. When he was guarding Dinwiddie, who's pretty shifty in his own right, he shot 1 for 5 on Klay from three and from the field. Uh,
Yeah, but they're
Guys
not
like
the creme de la creme, the elite of the cream of the top guards. Kerr was literally putting him on the best players in the
right.
NBA,
Like
bro.
I'm looking right here. Desmond Bain shot like the best players that Klay guarded were Desmond Bain and Jaylen Brown. Desmond shot 3 for 12 and 1 for 6 when guarded by Klay. And Reggie Bullock, another off ball kind of shooting type of guard, 1 for 8 from three when guarded by Klay. The
Yeah,
only
but this is
player
what
that
I'm
really did a
saying.
good job on Klay.
He's on like tertiary players, like not even secondary guys. Like you understand what I'm saying?
Exactly, exactly. Even Dylan Brooks, he shot 1 for 10 when Klay guarded him.
Yeah, brother, that's who
So
Clay. This is what it is now. Clay's not a terrible defender. He just can't guard the elite from top 30 players. Don't put Clay on that man. But the Reggie Bullocks, the fucking Dwight Powells, the Al Horfords, the role player Rodneys, put him on the role player Rodneys and let him cook, bro. There's nothing wrong with that. And then on top of it, when he makes stops, he creates stops that helps. We already have elite defenders. We have the
exactly,
Draymonds. We have the
yeah.
Wiggins. We have the GP2s. We have the Loonies. Like, what are we doing here? So at the end of the day, the winging it really exposed Clay to a different type of level. And again, I am not, I repeat, I'm not coming down on the chat. I'm not coming back down on none of us up here. I'm just giving you guys context to the difference between 2022 and 2023 season. That's it.
Last nugget, by the way, in that 2022 playoff run, I didn't even know this. I had the numbers wrong in my head, I guess. Jason Tatum shot 1 for 11 when Klay guarded him. So that 2022 run, you really make a good point.
He got
Like,
confidence. Once he was
yeah,
on the little role players, he got confidence to get the elite guys. Don't start him on the elite guys. Let him get cooked. And then now it's the other way around. The role players are getting confident. Yo, I just
yeah,
watched Fox kill you. Keegan Murray,
yeah,
boom,
yeah,
hold this. Boom, let me take you in the post. Hold this. You got to
right.
do it the other way around, Kerr. And Kerr just didn't coach well. As much as guys were bad, Jordan Poole, Klay, Steve Kerr was worse. I
Yeah,
don't care who was our Draymond. I don't care who was our worst player. Steve Kerr was worse.
100%. I'll get into expectations, and then you guys can kind of add to it as needed. Urkel, do you want to add anything to the strengths and weaknesses stuff, or do you think like it's up to you? If you have anything to add, feel free.
Dre, I did want to add one thing, which
Okay.
Shadow did an excellent job of contextualizing, which is basically in 3 guard lineups, being able to try to mask him, from a POA liability standpoint, because that's going to be really important for us, right? There's going to be certain matchups next season where having a 3 guard lineup with Chris Paul, Klay, and Steph is going to be to our advantage offensively, right? We can hunt certain teams with those types of lineups with with Wiggins at the 4 and Dre at the 5. But much of that is, whether it be it's matchup dependent. We have a team where they might not have a 4 that's a scoring presence inside. Maybe you can put the Klay on the 4 guy, right? Then you don't need to run a 3-2. If they do have big bigs that can score and they're
Where did
athletic,
everyone go? What happened?
maybe you run a 3-2, right? So, Urkel, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Oh, Urkel, do you hear us or no?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, do you hear CJ?
No.
Oh, you're on
You
mute.
got to drop down and come back. These guys are cooked, and now we're echoing. It's cooked.
Oh, you guys couldn't, Dre, you can't hear me?
I hear you. I hear you.
I hear you, CJ.
You hear me, Shadow, right?
That's AK. That's
Yeah.
AK.
Oh,
Yeah.
AK's in here. Oh, I don't see AK.
AK, I can hear you, but I can't see you. So drop
Oh,
down
it's
and
okay.
come back up.
I'll drop.
Okay. Yeah, this is a little buggy right now, but what were you saying though, CJ? Or were you talking? Or was that someone else?
That was AK talking.
That was AK.
No,
Okay,
but
okay.
we couldn't see AK, so I was assuming it was CJ when I didn't see AK.
Yeah.
That's why.
You're good. You're good.
All right, there we go. I see AK now.
Yeah, now I see AK. I see him.
So AK, what was the point you were making earlier? See if he gets off mute.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, cool. So I don't want to go all the way back, but basically my point was around Klay in 3 guard lineups defensively and trying to be able to mask point of attack when possible. So we know that there's going to be certain matchups where having a 3 guard lineup of Curry, Klay, and Chris Paul is going to really be to our benefit offensively. We can hunt certain teams in certain mismatches. And Shadow did an excellent job contextualizing some of the changes that we can make that Kerr didn't make last year that should be made in order to be able to give that lineup a chance to succeed. So, for example, if we're facing a team where they have 4s that aren't very athletic or can't really score inside, maybe you could put Klay on some of those dudes, or that they're spacers but they're not much of a presence inside, so you can cover them off ball. Cool. Then his POA responsibility is fewer and far between. Then a guy like Wiggins can take their main point of attack guy, right? Whether it be an athletic wing or a guard, that works. Shadow talked about some 3-2 zones, right, where if they do have guys inside that are present to score, they are big athletic 4s that can cause us problems inside, where you definitely want to have a guy like Wiggins matching up inside, where you have a 3-2 with Wiggins and Draymond. That definitely makes sense. So I just wanted to say that in thinking about that, especially about what Shadow was recently saying, it just kind of helped me think about. Look, I think that in those small ball lineups, in those 3 guard lineups, there are still ways to mask him defensively, not necessarily fully, right? Because you can't really mask Chris Paul and Klay, right, defensively. But there's certain things and certain switches that we can do to be able to make it work. And as Shadow said, put him in a position to succeed. So I just wanted
What
to call
else is
that out
gonna
because I
help?
think it's
So
super important.
yeah, you just my gigs were returning.
The light bulb. The light bulb. Yeah.
Do you know? Do you know what would literally help Klay like a motherfucker? Playing time for Jonathan Kuminga,
Mm-hmm.
because Jonathan
Yep.
Kuminga could have had those assignments that Kerr was pushing onto Klay. Because Klay was playing a lot with his second unit. You play Jonathan Kuminga, Klay doesn't have to go on those guys. Now, definitively, GP2, Wiggins, or Kuminga. Like, buck stops there, Klay go hide in the corner, go on a bozo. And then on offense, now you go hit those shots. But obviously, he's not hitting shots, bro. Lonnie Walker is fucking going to town on him in the fourth quarter. So the
Yep.
next game, he's gonna come back like mad and trying to show, because you know Klay's prideful. And again, Klay obviously missed shots. I'm not like gonna say that Klay was like perfect or there's no reason for scrutiny. He obviously missed shots, but it was heightened because his defense. Because Wiggins missed a lot of shots too, both playoffs. But guess what? His defense was so elite that didn't matter.
And his
But
rebound.
when Clay's terrible on offense and terrible on defense, now you guys have all right to start clowning him and saying all this stuff and what's he doing. And but majority of that is Klay wasn't put in positions on both ends. Kerr on offense and defense. Kerr didn't reel him in and didn't say give him a role to do or run certain sets. You know what? I'll give you a perfect example. In 2018, even though wasn't Steve Kerr, in 2018 they used to run elevator for Klay and and um and Steph. You understand what I'm saying? Plays like elevator, plays like floppy, plays like give Klay those plays that don't necessarily have to end up in the three, but split action going to be in the three. Some of those down screens and back up where Loon kicks it back to the top of the key. That's Klay. You're just baiting Klay to take those threes when you're calling those plays, and they're all 3-point baskets. Nothing in the paint. Like, remember we was making and we would like, hallelujah, Klay, you did a floater. Like, these are the things that I'm talking about, and no NBA player outside of fucking maybe Michael Jordan or is too big to listen to their coach and take a suggestion and reel it in. Like, bro, like it was just not necessary from Kerr, man. Like starting the man on Fox, then having like at one point I saw Klay on LeBron. Like, what are we doing here, man? Like, why, fam?
Did well. It's just LeBron was cooking him because LeBron's LeBron, and it's tough to guard LeBron, and that's a bad position to put Klay in.
And
Like,
that's a bad position to put Klay in. I'd rather you put Kuminga on there and make Kuminga get cooked. Because at the end of the day, his
Max.
confidence is not going to affect his offense. Whereas
yeah.
Clay's, it will. When Clay's defense is affecting his confidence, his offense gets compromised.
It's an excellent point.
Urkel or B, you guys have anything to add to the strengths or weaknesses? If not, that's cool. I can move on to expectations. Then we can kind of wrap it up after that.
The biggest
Yeah, like go to expectations.
Oh wait, no, Urkel wants to say something.
So the biggest thing with Klay is that it's a confidence thing, man. I mean, like if we just go back and just look at the shots that he's taken over the course of his playoff career, um, it's the same shots. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the same tough shots. Now, what was different is that when he missed a few, bro, he just kept pressing and pressing, and the shots kept on getting worse. You know what I'm saying? So that's my biggest thing with him, bro. It's like try to get better on defense, and I'll just live with the shots. You know what I'm saying? Get better on defense. You know, get your legs back on defense, and I'll live with the shots because I've lived with the shots, and we've been pretty successful. You know what I'm saying? But don't be like 1 of 10, and you think you're just going to keep shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting, and then like have some level of awareness on when you can do other things. You know what I'm saying? It can't be just about shooting the goddamn ball, bro. Like it's really that simple because shot that he took, the confidence dipped, and you could see it in his body language. You could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his body language. You know what I'm saying? And he just kept on keeping on. You know.
And
And Kerr didn't stop him. Kerr didn't sub him. Kerr didn't talk to
and
him.
Steph
None of
and
that.
Steph and Steph kept feeding him.
And Steph kept feeding him. This is what I'm saying because that's his dog. He's his co-pilot, and he wants to make sure he doesn't lose confidence. But his confidence was fucking on the ground, bro. It was dragging on the ground. His confidence was shot. It was over. Finito.
No, yeah, I love all those points, guys, for sure, for sure. Just rounding it out. And then I'm just going to get to expectations here, and you guys can kind of add anything that I might have missed. But basically, I said consistent starting role in minutes at shooting guard. So, he'll play his usual minutes. There's nothing that's going to change in terms of his role overall. He'll be featured in the motion offense, not just the offense from a creation standpoint, right? Because we've seen him be put in those positions, but mostly in the motion offense, right? Because there's times where he'll be more, in pick and roll or some shot creation stuff in the post against smaller matchups. But for the most part, he'll be in the motion offense as a floor spacer, as a guy that can make shots off the ball and create for others, whether it be through his movement or just being just a pure threat out there and making Steph's job easier as his backcourt partner. And then also, like I mentioned, off-ball shot advantage creation, right? Just moving without the basketball, commanding that respect and that attention where the defense can't really cheat off of him, maybe as they would on a Andrew Wiggins or Draymond or GP2, even Jordan Poole to a lesser extent. Guys like that, you have to always have a man on Klay Thompson, or he will punish you if you give him open looks. And then my hope is kind of an expectation / a hope is that he's a net neutral defender next season. And that kind of starts with his awareness, just being aware as a defender. And then as that kind of trickles down, it goes to attention to detail, positional discipline, sharp rotations. In other words, kind of what Shadow was harping on, where we need more layered and diverse schemes. We need to run more coverages out there so we can be put in positions so he can, be locked in, have attention to detail, understand his matchup, his assignment, what he has to do to thrive and be effective as a defender, have good positional discipline, not fouling, not get beat, don't gamble, have, textbook closeouts, sliding his feet to the best of his ability, recovering, putting himself in positions to be a positive defender, and then maybe he physically can't be a positive defender, but he'll end up being a net neutral because he's put himself in those advantageous situations and positions, right? Thinking the game defensively at this point in Klay's career is more important than actually physically being a good defender, right? And then lastly, sharp rotations, like I said, closing out on shooters, not falling asleep on backdoor cuts or weak side actions. Just understanding like when to help, when to, how to guard the post and kind of rotate off of those breakdowns, things like that, helping the helper, all the schemes that we like to run. And I also expect him to guard bigger wings at times, right? Like big, slow wings that may not be as kind of, rather than using his quickness, use something that's a strength of his, which is his physical strength in his upper body, right? Klay is a very strong core. He even many years ago against the Cavs in those finals, he was doing a good job holding his own against Kevin Love in the post, in that low post. So Klay still has that ability to just bang down low with some of the premier bigs in the NBA, guys who are strong, that have maybe even 20, 30 pounds on him, 3 or 4 inches in terms of height, but he's still able to be very effective in pockets. So ultimately, I'd expect him to guard, bigger players, guys that maybe are a little bit slower footed but stronger, because it's the easier matchup for him from that standpoint as well. But like Shadow mentioned, the idea is that he's not guarding more difficult or higher difficulty matchup players, right? Like matchup difficulty should be mostly reserved for like the Draymonds, the Wiggins, and the GP2s, right? And maybe Kuminga. But like Klay's matchup difficulty should not be that high, right? It should be on the lower end, but he should be effective against lower competition, which he was in 2022, right? So these numbers, the eye test, it's all matching up in terms of setting Klay up for success. defensively. And then the last thing, and this is kind of what Urkel harped on, and he did a good job of outlining it, was Klay Thompson. This is probably my favorite expectation / note. He needs to evolve as he ages, right? And Bruce Frazier actually told Klay this middle of the season last year. That essentially, as Klay gets older, he's going to have to change how he kind of approaches the game, be more well-rounded. So helping out on the boards, boxing out, putting a body, because he's a 6'7" player out there, so he needs to be more conscious and put more thought into rebounding the basketball. And then on top of that, being a better connective passer, a guy that in drive and kick situations, or maybe beating his man off the bounce in a closeout. Like I said, attacking closeouts, or against mismatches, like understanding how to be a better connective passer. So, if he's able to, move the ball better in this type of offense, because we do run a system that's really dependent on player movement and ball movement. If he can be effective in those positions, then it only can help and elevate how effective we are in like the sets we like to run and the style of play we like to harp on. So that's kind of the idea. And if you guys have anything to add in terms of his role.
I would like to see him get to the basket a little bit more and probably get some plays run for him to get to the paint a little bit more often. I know he was a bad finisher last year, but I would still like to see him evolve that part of his game as a finisher.
100% agree. And there were times last season when he was guarded by like smaller players, like guys who were 6'3" or 6'4". He would just back them down in the post and just put them in the rim. I mean, there were times that I remember distinctly. He just did a really good job of taking advantage of those situations at the basket. So traditionally, while he may not be quick downhill or fast in transition, there's ways for him to be crafty and physically imposing, using his frame and size and strength to give himself that advantage as a shot creator down, like at the basket, particularly, right? Downhill in those types of positions. And obviously we mentioned the mid range right earlier, but I think he needs to be more intentional with how he uses the mid range. I think there were times last season where he kind of settled too much, whether it be just like that fadeaway that he likes to take when he can't get past his man, or kind of just at the nail. Maybe he has a few extra feet of space and can make a play, but instead settles for like a 15-footer. The idea is maybe he can be a bit more intentional with the space he's given if he's attacking the closeout, or if he has a mismatch in front of him, right? If Anthony Davis is guarding you, your first thought should not be, I'm going to take a fadeaway mid-range at the elbow. It should be, I'm going to try to get to the rim. He's a good defender, but if he cuts me off, then I'll reset and then take the next best option. But going into those possessions where you have a big on you and settling for a perimeter shot is probably not ideal from an efficiency standpoint, because we kind of saw Klay as the playoffs went on, his shot selection got worse and worse. Again, particularly against matchups that were considered favorable, like guys like Kevin Huerter, guys like even a smaller defender like
Lonnie
Davion Mitchell.
Walker.
Lonnie Walker, right? Like, it felt at times he was just too perimeter reliant, and he could have been a bit more layered and diverse with how he attacked. But no, I agree. But yeah, anyone else have anything to add in terms of like what you expect from him next year? Is he gonna improve? Do you guys think this will be okay? This is my question. So I know, like, I don't expect him to improve. Um, I don't want to say noticeably, but in a like at this stage of his career, he's what, 34, 33, 34. So he's in his early to mid 30s. It's very rare that you see a player improve that much at this stage in their career, especially after two catastrophic injuries. But historically, like, players do improve after Achilles tears as they get older. Usually their second season back, they actually, play better than their first season back, and then that kind of trends as as they age. So my question is, do you think this will be Klay's best season back since the Achilles tear?
Like
I do.
combining postseason and regular season, maybe.
Yes.
I think he was better.
But I do think he'll become a. So he was pretty good rebounding last year, and you kind of touched on that early on. But I do think he's going to continue improving his rebounding because like Steve, he played him at the 4 a lot last year, so a little bit too much for my liking actually. But I do think Klay will continue to improve as a rebounder, and that's kind of what he has to do because defensively he's probably not going to get better. And so you kind of have to find other ways to improve. And I think rebounding is one of them. And I think he's really going to key in on that next year. And I think that's one thing, like you said early on in the presentation, like he's becoming a better rebounder. And I think he's going to be even better next year.
And Dre, there's in regards to expectations and what the type of season that he will have, there's certain expectations, all of which basically you've covered here today, that are basically benchmarks that need to be met in order for us to have a successful season. As part of a big reason why we do, because he is a core part of the team. He's not Klay's impact is not in the margins, right? It's direct and it has a big magnitude. But there is an elephant in the room with Klay. And in terms of the expectations that he would either set for himself, or objectively, just from a basketball standpoint, we and really, less importantly us, but even more so the front office would be thinking about and putting in place, and they already have those things in mind, in order for him to get the money that he wants, and that's going to be, obviously that's hanging over the season. It's going to impact some tangible and some intangible things, but just wanted to know if you wanted to cover some of that stuff in his player profile, or later on a different day or later this evening.
You guys, what do you guys think in the chat on stage? You want to talk a little bit about the contract stuff and kind of what we expect from him next year on the court, and if that translates, and the concerns with that particular number that they want to agree on? Let me know. Shadow, do you have anything?
I don't want to go down. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole.
No, bro, we're gonna go down a super rabbit hole.
You know what I'm saying?
But I
Like, I'm
think
not trying to go down a rabbit hole in his
did
player
Urkel
profile.
just start up Playback?
I don't know. Did he? If he did, then just give me. Yeah, he did. All right, give me like 5 minutes. I just want to go through.
Okay, go through your last.
Go ahead,
things.
Dre.
Yeah, last slide. This is my player projection for Klay. So, 32 minutes per game or so, 21 points per game overall, a little bit over. A touch under what he averaged last year. He averaged 21.9, so I have him at a little bit less from a production standpoint. But rebounds, a little bit of a dip because I assume Jonathan Kuminga, and having Chris Paul, who averages around 4 rebounds for his career as well. Kuminga taking a step. I expect Klay to not feel the need or have to compensate from a rebounding standpoint as much next season as he did this year, because we were much more undersized, didn't have as much didn't have as many rebounders available from that standpoint. And then his assists, I have it about 2.5, 2.6. The traditional, he'll get a few from a connective standpoint. He may have a nice driving kick, but I expect most of his playmaking value to come from off the ball. About a steal or so, maybe a little bit higher than traditional, but I do think Klay's going to be more active and conscious defensively than he always has been. So I think that'll reflect in his steals numbers. And then blocks per game, about half a block a game. He's always active, trying to contest shots and whatnot. So he'll find himself just getting a block here or there. And then I have his efficiency going up. I think he'll play much more within the flow of the offense. I do expect him to come with a changed approach to how he plays the game from just overall team standpoint, and putting his agendas aside from a I want to get back to the player I was standpoint. I think he'll be much more selfless in terms of making that conscious effort and sacrificing, whether it be maybe his shot attempts don't go too far down, but I do think his efficiency will go up because he will play more intentionally and more effectively within the offense that we like to run. So I have him at about 44% from the field and around 42, just a touch under from three. And that 44% from the field is about a percentage point jump from last year. The 3-point percentage, I think, is slightly it might be around the same. Actually, let me check. I think it might be, let me check. Yeah, it's a little bit better. So it's a little bit better. I have him at about half a percentage point better than he was last year. And then the free throw line around 80, 89, 90% as always. But yeah, I have his 3-point percentage going up, having played next to Chris Paul, and his field goal percentage going up as well, just being more effective as a scorer and having a cleaner mindset going into the season.
I'll say this: if he's putting up these numbers and they have a good enough record by All-Star break, he will be an All-Star with these numbers.
And that's very possible, and I agree with that, actually. I do agree with that. And I do think it's possible that he can produce these numbers, given the addition of CP3 to make his job easier in the second unit, given a refreshed, a new mindset and mentality going to next season to approach it the right way, playing the game how it's supposed to. And then the final thing that I added was I think he'll be a plus 194 on the season. So I think he'll be a positive like he has been the last 2 years. He'll have a great impact next season, and I'm optimistic that I'm seeing some of these pictures that have been floating on these workout images from Twitter, and it seems as if he is already in game shape. He's in already mid-season shape, based on what I've seen just visually. So I'm quite pleased with how he's handled the offseason from a introspective standpoint, just reflecting on the errors and the mistakes he made last year and how he can correct them for next season, but also from a taking his body seriously, working out, putting the work in. So putting the work in early so he doesn't have to catch up later and fail, and his body fail him right in the playoffs the way it did at least last season. I think in 2022 it was a much better outcome. So anybody have any changes or any suggestions that from this projection, or you guys agree?
I agree
Dre,
with
I wouldn't.
everything.
I wouldn't call it a change because I agree. I think that you're closer to the realistically what it will be, and I agree with you. It's just my a preference that I would I do want to see a pretty big jump in improved shot selection from him and playing within the offense more so this season. So personally, I just would love to see that more than 18 and 19 points per game on 46-47% from the field. That would be like my dream scenario. If I could think about the outlook of what that would look like, that would just be awesome if you could give us that. But I think that you're more spot on and realistic what we're gonna get, which is good. Like these aren't necessarily it's not necessarily bad efficiency, so to speak. And as you guys said, like he could be an all-star, with these numbers. But that's just just because I know that signals like that would be telling that his shot selection is significantly improved. He's playing within the flow of the offense. He's not forcing shots. Everything of that nature.
100% agree with you. In an ideal world, like if he can give us closer to 18, 19 a night on lower shot attempts but greater efficiency,
Yeah.
that would be optimal for how we would like to run our offense and win games. But obviously, he's still, I think you are who you are to some extent, and I
Yeah.
think he'll try to find that balance between looking and hunting for his own, but also trying to play winning basketball consistently. So I have a feeling there will be nights where he'll give us, 14 points on 5 for 18. But I do also think that it won't be as much because he's looking for his shot as much as he just shot poorly. And so
Right.
Klay's generally a volatile player. He's up and down. He's a shooter at the end of the day. He's a perimeter-oriented player. So he's never going to truly be consistent on a night-to-night basis. But what we can hope for is he just approaches the game in a selfless, team-oriented way. So everybody's kind of involved, and we can hopefully integrate, Wiggins and CP3 more easily if Klay is kind of embracing a lesser role from that standpoint. And I will also mention one last thing before I end this. CP3, I think, is going to help him a lot. A big reason why I have his efficiency going up the way I do is because I do think CP is going to use him like a Cam Johnson, where Klay is just going to find him, or Klay is just going to come off the screens, off the ball, move, be extremely effective navigating the offense through the motion concepts and patterns we like to run. And CP, just like Klay said in the Paul George interview, is going to pass that rock right on the seams. And I think he's going to make Klay's job really easy because he will be looking to make that pass for Klay, before he looks to score. And so having a guy that's going to be hunting for you to hunt shots is a breath of fresh air for Klay Thompson, and that's why I expect him to take a jump in terms of efficiency, for sure. And I think it'll be a much smoother season for him overall. So that's kind of my take on that. But hey, man, I know Urkel started to play back, so we'll head over there. But I appreciate everybody once again. We got 2 of these left in terms of players, and then we got Steve Kerr. But we got Draymond tomorrow, and then we got a top 5 player, in my opinion, and the greatest shooter, the greatest player of this era, Steph Curry. On what's today? Wednesday, so Friday. Friday we got Steph. So yeah, man, I appreciate everybody for just contributing and adding to the conversation, as always. And we'll head to Urkel's, but like I said, a few more of these. But this has been great, man. Peace out.